What's going on, everybody? We've got JT here, we've got David, and we've got C Will over at the Passive Income Network. What's going on, guys?
Nothing
Oh,
much.
hey, life is good. I'm happy to see y'all and do this show.
Yeah, it's a great show. We've got Mark Yusko tuning in as a great guest. Mark is the founder, CEO, and CIO of Morgan Creek Capital Management, as well as the co founder and partner of Morgan Creek Digital. And it's going to be a great show. So I'm super pleased for him to take the time out of his day to come on this show. So without further ado, why don't we just introduce Mark to the show?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Welcome, Mark.
All
How you doing?
right. Hey, doing great, doing great. Thanks for having me on. And I appreciate the purple theme to go with my shirt here today. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked out perfectly. I appreciate, of course, you taking the time out of your day to come on the show. If you could just take a moment and maybe, give a little background on yourself. I know you come from the traditional finance
yeah,
sector, but you found your way into Bitcoin, and I'm sure that journey was relatively interesting. So if you could just illuminate our audience on that
yeah.
journey.
Interesting in air quotes, JT. Oh no, it's been amazing. And I'll try to do short. I don't do short well. I
Oh,
will
that's
try.
fine.
I'm old, right? That's the first thing. So I've been around a long time, and I came out of the traditional world first managing endowment money. So I worked at my alma mater at Notre Dame, and then ran the endowment here in North Carolina at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and then almost 20 years ago started a company, Morgan Creek Capital Management, that would bring that model of investing, broad diversified asset management, use of alternatives across other investors, so individuals, smaller pensions, endowments, et cetera. Did that for a long time. And one of my big things back in 2000, I was labeled the Madonna of hedge funds. What does that mean? I'm a guy, not a woman. Well, it was that I was always up on stage at conferences saying that institutions needed to invest in hedge funds. You needed to get hedged, that the markets were super overvalued. You needed to use downside protection. And so, when the markets cracked in 2000, 2001, 2002, we actually were able to be dead flat over that 3-year period because of hedge funds. And so we backed a lot of hedge funds over the years, and most notably a guy named Dan Moorhead, who runs a firm called Pantera, who everyone's heard of in the crypto space. And Dan came out of Julian Robertson's shop 20 plus years ago. We were his first institutional check, and he ran a macro fund. And I'm a macro guy. So I'm part of what I call the OMGs, the old macro guys. So myself and Dan Tapiero and Paul Tudor Jones and all these old macro guys who have suddenly found Bitcoin and digital assets. And long story short, Dan said, "Hey, come to San Francisco." This is 2013. And full disclosure, right? First of my many bad decisions. I mean, I was introduced to Bitcoin the same month as the Winklevoss twins. They are multi-billionaires, and there's a book written about them, not about me, because I was skeptical, right? Dan brought me out to San Francisco and he said, "Hey, I'm going to spend the rest of my career focused on Bitcoin and blockchain infrastructure. I'm going to shut down my hedge fund." I said, "Why would you give back $1 billion charging 2 and 20?" And he said, "Oh, this is an amazing thing." And look, I was not running drugs on Silk Road. I was not a cryptography student. In 2013, I'm like, Bitcoin, I heard of it. I don't get it. I don't have any. I didn't buy weed with it. I don't know what you're talking about. And so he said, "All right, fine. Don't worry about it. But infrastructure." And look, infrastructure, I get. And I've been very fortunate in my life, again, series of happy accidents. So in the early 90s, we invested in a bunch of venture capital funds when I was at Notre Dame that became brand names, Kleiner Perkins, Sequoia, et cetera. And we put $500,000 into this little company called Google, which at the time seemed like an idiotic idea, stupid name. Now it's a verb. And there were 20 search engines. Why do we need 21? And what we didn't get was that Larry and Sergey had this way of creating a better way of doing search. And then they had a better way of tracking us and everything we do and monitoring every part of our life and become a $1 trillion company. But we took out $200 million from that 500K. So we made a lot of money for the university. And I had this aha moment that infrastructure I told you I suck at short. So, okay. So I made investment in
So you telling a
infrastructure.
great
Dan was going to
story.
do infrastructure. And I said, all right, I'm in. And this is a bad decision, right? That fund is up like 17x. Okay. 17x. That's great. But if I put in the Bitcoin fund, I'd be up 350x.
Yep.
But I didn't do that. And so 9 months later, I had finally done a little bit of work, and I wrote to my clients that they should look at Bitcoin as a special situation. They should put a little bit in, 25 basis points, 50 basis points. I used to write these long letters. It was 40 pages, one paragraph saying Bitcoin is interesting. I got hate. Like, I'll fire you. You're an idiot. Don't talk about this. Go do your job. You're supposed to be focused on hedge funds and venture capital. Go do that. It's like, wow. So, okay, fine. And price went from $500 in March of 14 to 186 by September. I'm like, oh, look, they were right. And then 8 weeks later, it's $1,000. I'm like, no, they are not right. There's something here. And so I did more work. And literally, my son was graduating from college. He wanted to live in San Francisco his whole life, be in tech. I said, one word, not plastics, like The Graduate, one word, blockchain. Go get a job in blockchain. I sent him out to talk to Dan. Dan introduced him to people at Coinbase. He's like, I don't know, Dad. Maybe it's going to be a big deal. I'm going to go to KPMG. It's safe. Gets me to San Francisco. I'm like, you're going to hate it, which he did, quit after 9 months. And when they went public, he called me up and said, Dad, all right, fine, you were right. I should have gone to work at Coinbase. But you're not as smart as you think you are. I'm like, oh, do tell. I told you to work at Coinbase. It's like, yeah, but you didn't lever up the house and put on Bitcoin. Like, shit. Okay, totally fair. And so that was 2015. Finally, in 16, I got some of our clients to say, fine, you badgered us enough. We'll buy some stuff. We bought a little Bitcoin, a little Ethereum. And then a year later, I decided I was going to raise a fund. And so I had met these two young guys, not that young, but Pomp and Jason. And I met them totally random, right? We were doing an investment in Lyft. We were big investors in Uber, in Lyft, in Didi, and all the ride sharing. And we had met for 15 minutes. They were nice guys. But then I started following Pomp on Twitter. I kept hitting like. Everything he says. It's something I would say. That is something I said. I need to meet this guy. So we met for breakfast at the end of 2017. Breakfast turned into lunch, turned into dinner, turned into the next day. We got to do something. So we cooked up this idea to create Morgan Creek Digital, which we formed first quarter 2018, went out to raise a venture fund, and we got lucky. We had a visionary CIO, two CIOs at Virginia Retirement System, give us $20 million. We raised another $20 million, raised a $40 million fund. And we made a bunch of great investments. 70% or 85% of the money went into companies. 15% went into protocols, Bitcoin, Ethereum, through multi-coin capital. We got some Solana and some Graph. And the fund's done great. We raised a second fund in 2020. We're raising a third fund right now. Anyway, that's way longer than I intended, but that's my backstory.
No, that's great. Obviously, I'm sure it's good to know, where you come from and what expertise you bring. And obviously you've seen a lot, from the early stages of, the people who got in, who knew it and made, huge amounts of money. But then also I feel like the story, like it's never too late, right? You can always do your research and still pick up as you go.
Well, it's definitely never too late. And here's the thing. What people are missing about what's going on is this is not a thing. This is not Beanie Babies. This is not baseball cards. This is not some fad. In fact, that's my thing. # probably a fad with a little rocket ship. I tweet that out all the time. It's not a fad, right? And it's sarcasm, right? It's total sarcasm, by the way. When people are like, what do you mean it's a fad? I'm like, guys, it's sarcasm. Maybe I need a little, winky face. But here's the thing. This is an evolution of technology that is as incontrovertible and inevitable as the internet, as the mobile net. And this has been going on for 70 years. This is not a new thing. And it has to do with computing power and the evolution of computing power. And it's been my life, right? My dad sold IBM mainframe computers. And this all started back in 1954 out in Boston, right? Not Silicon Valley. Boston was the center of the universe where JT's sitting right now. And out on Route 128, there was this little company called Digital Equipment Corp, founded by $70,000 of venture capital. And they started making computers that were as big as a house, but now a company, not just a government, could have a computer. And, other companies, Wang, one of my favorite names, and, IBM and all these other companies were built, and they were real businesses, and you made a lot of money investing in those businesses. 14 years later, there was an innovation out in Silicon Valley around DARPA, this invention of the microchip. And these little companies like Fairchild Semiconductor and Intel, you might have heard of it. And this guy, Don Valentine from Sequoia, invested and made a bunch of money. And then 14 years later, and why it's always 14 years, that's to do with young people. Young people invent everything cool, right? Because old people can't imagine the unimaginable. Young people don't know what they don't know. And so they're willing to imagine the unimaginable and build things. So Mark Andreessen, when he built the browser, 19 years old. Larry and Sergey in their 20s. Bill Gates looked like he was 14. If you ever look at the picture of the original Microsoft 11, which I always used to defend myself. So 1982, personal computing. And I grew up in Seattle. And a lot of my friends don't have to work anymore. They went to work for that little company. I would say, if you've seen the picture, the original 11 people at Microsoft, you wouldn't blame me. Now, they're all multi-billionaires and I'm not, so I should not make fun of them. It's a common theme, right? Lots of multi-billionaires and not me. But the interesting thing is Steve Ballmer's mom, quoting the guy from DEC, right? DEC had become the incumbent, and personal computing, he said, no one would ever want a computer in their house, right? Charles Darwin said, there's a maximum need globally for 100 computers. 100. And Charles Darwin was a pretty smart guy. But the incumbents can't see the change that's coming. And so Steve Ballmer's mom said, honey, why'd you go to work for that company? Well, he has 18 billion reasons he was right, mom was wrong. So 14 years later, we did that investment in the internet. Remember Bryant Gumbel saying, what is internet? What is that @ symbol? And Paul Krugman said, it'll never be more important than a fax machine. Yeah, right. It's more important than a fax machine. Trillions of dollars of wealth created. 14 years later, I'm actually back in Seattle at Craig McCaw's house. Craig is a famous investor in cellular technology. And I asked his family office guy, do you think the mobile net will be as big as the internet? He's like, Mark, you kidding me? Ask people if they want a computer. Like, whatever. Ask them if they want a phone. They're like, I already have 2. I don't need another one. Yeah. The mobile net will be bigger than the internet. And the mobile net, Web 2, created unbelievable, untold wealth. First multi-trillion-dollar companies, way more wealth than Web 1. And it's all about exponential growth. Think of an exponential curve, right? It goes parabolic to the x-axis, then the other curve, and then it goes parabolic to the y-axis. And the thing is, people suck at math. Like if I say to you 3, what's 2 times 2? I'll say 4, okay? If I say what's 17 times 23, and I say, I'll wait.
We're stumped at that point.
That's the limit of human intelligence, right? The average human being cannot do 17 times 23 in their head. They need a calculator. And so if I say, how are you at nonlinear logarithmic regression? You're going to say, I suck at that, right? Or the fact that if I take 20 linear steps across my library, I get to the other side. If I take 20 exponential steps, I get to high five JT twice. I go around the world twice, all right? And so people just can't understand exponential growth. And so the exponential age, which is all about Metcalfe's law and networks, is all about how we went from computing on machines to computing in networks. And the biggest, most valuable things in the world today are not companies. Amazon doesn't make anything.
Yeah.
Right? They are a search engine that matches buyers and sellers. They are made valuable by the network, right? If 2 people talk about financial literacy, it's a nice conversation. But a network of people engaged in expanding financial literacy creates change for good, change for the world. And so networks is what it's all about. And now we're at this point where blockchain technology is the operating system for the internet of value. And again, the mind-blowing thing is for thousands of years, the church had a monopoly on information. And the printing press came along. Remember, literally, you went to church on Sundays. Most people couldn't read and write. And you were given your beliefs by the person in church. They told you what to think. They told you how to think. They told you when to think. And then the printing press came along. And suddenly, oh, I don't have to think that. I got this book. Now I got to learn to read and I got to learn to write. But it changed the world. So then governments took over that control. And through state-sponsored media, either state-owned, like China or Russia, or state-sponsored, like ABC, NBC, CBS, where it was three networks, but the same, propaganda, that state had control of information. The internet busted that monopoly wide open.
Yeah.
Like I use the example of Argentinian elections. If I want to know what's happened in the Argentinian election, the old days, I waited for the reporter to fly to BA, write the story, send it back to New York, have it edited. 2 days later, it comes out in the Times. I read it. Oh, cool. Now I go on Twitter, I go to Periscope, I watch people standing in line live for 2 hours chanting Macri's name, like he's going to win. And information became bi-directional for the first time ever. Now value is bi-directional. We can take anything of value, money, property, anything, right? A JPEG, a piece of art, a collectible, a case of wine, a car, anything of value can now be digitized, can be made a token, an entry on a ledger, public, immutable, secure, and can be exchanged anywhere in the world instantaneously with no middle people. That creation, that evolution of technology will create more wealth than all the other wealth creation opportunities that came before it. This is the exponential part. This is the asymptotic move to the y-axis. Web3. Anyway,
I got a question because thank you for this great explanation. I love the story. That's why we're all quiet. I do want to bring up something. Warren Buffett comes to my mind. You heard him recently talking about he wouldn't buy all of Bitcoin for $25. I just want to hear your response on that, or like what do you feel
consider
about
the source. Consider the source. Look, if your livelihood depends on not understanding something, you will not understand it. Full stop. Warren Buffett is a genius. Not the way people think he's a genius. He's not a genius stock picker. He's not some old grandpa that picks stocks. He's actually not really a very nice person most of the time. But bottom line is he is a genius. Why? He used political influence to create a structure that allows him to defer tax on his gains through Berkshire Hathaway. Absolute genius. And how did he get that done? Right? He is the monopoly man. How did he get that done? Right? His dad was a very powerful congressman. That's how he got it done. Right? And so the genius is he takes low volatility assets that pay dividend streams. He finances the purchase of them with negative cost of capital money, insurance company. People pay him, right, to hold their money through Geico Insurance. Then he levers those, buys them on margin. So he levers his securities and doesn't have to pay tax indefinitely. It's absolute genius. And people should own Berkshire Hathaway because it is absolute genius. But he's not the, oh, shucks, I'm going to go buy a value stock. That's not what he does. He buys businesses that generate cash flow and he levers them. Then it's even worse. Then he uses his political power to get things cheap. Like who got the call when Bank of America was about to go under? Oh, Warren did. In fact, he says that I was in my bathtub when I got the call. Well, yeah, of course, because you got the call. Or, when Apple was really
Apple's
cheap,
the next one.
who got the call? Well, isn't Apple a tech company? I thought he hated tech. No. He loves cash. Well, how did he get cash? They cut a deal with Apple and others saying, here's the deal. We will cut your marginal tax rate in exchange for you buying back shares. Apple has had no growth of income for the last 6 years. No growth of income. But their earnings per share went up. How did they do that? They bought back shares. That's called financial engineering. And people don't seem to do math again. So it's a long way of saying Warren is going to FUD forever, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, on anything that threatens him. So 46% of Berkshire Hathaway is financial services, because financial services, fee revenues, like overdraft fees. The banks charge massive amounts to poor people. What do they do? You put in your money, they hold that until your checks come in, then they automatically overdraft you, then they deposit the money, and they take overdraft charges. I mean, that's theft. That is manipulation and theft.
I think of Wells Fargo for sure.
Exactly. Oh, come on. Wells Fargo is way guilty, and that's one of his biggest holdings. And so what does he fear? He fears that middle person, banks, not being necessary. Like if I want to send you money, see, well, you have to have a bank account. I have to have a bank account. I send you a wire transfer. They charge us for that.
Yep.
Well, if I want to send you a Bitcoin, I don't have to have a bank account. You don't have to have a bank account. And if we use the Strike app, we can do it for free. We can do it for zero. Now, zero is the wrong number. It should have some cost. But we don't have to pay money for that. And so what does that mean for payments? It's like this whole fintech revolution. Only one problem. There's no tech. It uses 70-year-old technology, SWIFT, ACH, FedWire, all of which T+2
Even
settlement.
JP Morgan use an old system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Visa, which I think we all think of as money. It's not money, right? It's a layer 3. But Visa runs on a mainframe computer. True. Runs on a mainframe computer on COBOL. And I love this. I was talking to the guy. He said, it's kind of a moat because no one knows how to hack COBOL. But when it breaks, we got to put on a light at the Sunnyvale retirement home, and an 80-year-old comes and fixes our computer. And he's not lying because no one else knows how to code COBOL except people like my dad, who's 84 years old. Yep. So that's why Warren says it's like rat poison squared. I'm like, well, how do you know what rat poison tastes like unless you're a rat? That's first. Second, his partner one-upped him. See, well, Charlie Munger said it's trading Bitcoin is like trading newly harvested dead baby brains.
Yep.
Like, what the fuck, Charlie?
That's crazy.
Seriously?
You must have traded those before.
But why did he say that? No, but why did he say that? He said that for effect. Why? Because he doesn't want people to go here. Because if people go to Bitcoin, crypto, digital assets, money flows out of the banking system. If money flows out of the banking system, the over-levered, rehypothecated Ponzi scheme falls apart.
Yeah.
And look, I don't want anarchy. I'm not an anarchist. I don't want to blow up the old system. I want to make the system better. I want to make better rails. I want to make T instant settlement. I want to be able to, like, if I had a mother-in-law in El Salvador, which I don't, she's in Oklahoma, but if I had one in El Salvador and I sent her $1 through Western Union, she would get 70 pesos. That's bullshit. Yeah. She should get 100 pesos. Right? Why should she get 70? Well, because Western Union takes a cut and the Rothschilds take a cut because of Bank of International Settlements and
it takes a few days.
Local bank, and it takes a couple days, right? And she's got to go, and this is the crazy part, and she's got to go to a part of town that's not really that safe and pick up the money and put it in her pocket, and she can get hit with a club on the way home. Why can't she be in the safety of her house and shows up on her phone? So with Strike, she gets 100 pesos. So, and full disclosure, we're investors in Strike and all that good stuff.
I was about to say, tell us more about Strike. And, JT, David, make sure y'all say anything.
The only question I want to have before we get off that topic, and just coming from my, background in banking and finance, and you talked about, the exponential growth that you see coming for digital assets like Bitcoin. Obviously, we're big bulls on Algorand. We see similar things in that ecosystem as the network effect grows. But you also mentioned that there is a lot of middlemen, right? There's a lot of people in that right now are facilitating all these transactions for people, and to get them cut out immediately would create some type of anarchy. So like, where do you think we're at as far as you can say as far as where you see Bitcoin is at on that axis with the knowing that there are institutions and more adoption, there is bigger players starting to adopt and adjust. Even some of the bigger banks are starting to acknowledge it and things like that. But where do you think we are at on that chart?
We're in the third phase. No, it's a great question. We're in the third phase. So the famous quote that I guess Gandhi didn't say, but it's always attributed to him. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Well, whoever said it, I wish I could remember. But so 2009 to 2015 was first they ignore you, right? This is all a bunch of science projects, a bunch of nerds and geeks, and who gives a crap? Bitcoin, $1. I mean, 10,000 Bitcoin for pizzas. Who cares? It's just stupid.
Right.
Okay. First they ignore you. 2015 till 2021, then they laugh at you, right? Oh, look at those nerds and geeks, and it's $1,000, and it went to 20, and then it went to 3, and it's a bear market and a rug pull, and that's a bunch of nerds and geeks, and it's a Ponzi scheme, and all go to 0. Well, now 2022 to probably 2027, we're in the then they fight you phase. Now, what's the then they fight you phase? The then they fight you phase is where the incumbents say, "Oh shit, this is real. This has implications for me, right? This is draining money." Because if you leave your money in the bank, okay, two things. One, it's not your money anymore. It's the bank's money.
Yep.
Which is, what are you talking about? Like, if you put your money in a bank, it's no longer your money. It shows up on their balance sheet. You have an IOU. Now, that IOU is good most of the time, 99.9% of the time. But in that 0.1, it's very bad. La Jolla Savings Bank, Cyprus, you wake up and your money's gone and you have no recourse.
Closed 2 days of the week too.
Yeah, closed 2 days of the week and overnight. But the bottom line is not your money. And so the thing is, if you think about that for a second, you're like, well, wait a minute, why can't I have control of my own money? Why can't I, unbank myself? That's another problem. 40% of the people in the world don't have a bank account.
Mm-hmm.
40% of the people in the world, right? 2.8 billion people, it's a lot of people, don't have a bank account. They can get financial services through their mobile using the things that we're talking about, crypto and protocols. So that's another piece of it, that we don't want anarchy. But if you leave your money in the bank, you get paid 0.05 or whatever percent. If I take it out, convert it to a stable coin, a real stable coin, not an algorithmic stable coin, but a real stable coin, and I deposit it with someone like BlockFi or some other reputable source, they will pay me interest, right? 5 to 6%, 20%. If someone promises you 20 to 40% in a zero interest rate world, run away. Like, why do people think that? Why do people think that exists? Right? Use logic. Right? There's a reason that you get paid zero interest in the banking system. Why is that? Supply and demand. There's excess supply of money. There's too much money, too many deposits, too much cash. Think of the cash that Apple has, $260 billion, right?
Yeah.
And when you have too much cash, okay, there's no reason for banks to pay high rates of interest because people just have to park the cash. And so it's a supply and demand. If you convert some of that fiat into digital assets and deposit it, there is demand from trading companies and others to borrow, and they will pay interest, and they'll pay 15%, maybe 20%. But you're not going to get all of that, right?
Yeah.
The company has to operate. So let's say you can lend out at 15 and pay 5. The company keeps 10, and it's a pretty good business, right? A bank lends out at 3 to 4, pays 0 to 1. It's a less good business, still a good business, but they get to lever up, and then they're guaranteed by FDIC and all these other good things. And look, banks have had a good run, 800 years. 800 years. Banks have had a good run.
A pretty good run.
See, pre-1200, there were no banks.
Nope.
Right? There were no banks. We had single entry accounting. I lent JT money. I wrote down in my ledger how much he owes me. I write down 100. I give him $100. He comes back and says, gives me the $100 plus $10 for interest. Oh no, JT, you owe me 200. No, I took 100. Says right here. It's my word against yours.
Yep.
So the Medicis, 800 years ago, came along and said, well, that's bullshit. We need 2 ledgers. JT keep a ledger, Mark keep a ledger. But Mark could still be unscrupulous. I could still write down 200. Now it's his word against mine.
Yep.
I'm older. Maybe I'm more trustworthy. Who knows? Okay. Who are you going to trust? The Medici said, no. We, the benevolent Medicis, for a small fee, will determine which number is right. And both numbers match. Okay. And that's what banking is. That's all banking is. Dual entry accounting. That's what banks are. And they charge a fee. Now we have code. So now I don't need people. And wait a minute. I trust code more than I trust people.
Yep.
If you get lost, now you guys are in different parts of the world, but I live in the South. If you get lost in the South, you do not stop and ask directions. Because people say, go to where the oak tree was and take a left, and then go to where the general store was and take a right. I don't know where that is, so that's not helping. So I get my Apple Maps or Google Maps, and I trust code.
Yep.
And people can cheat. Enron, WorldCom, okay? People cheat.
Every bank.
It just happens. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of examples of that. Code can't cheat. If I have a derivative contract, but look what happened with the nickel market, right? Russia gets invaded, nickel prices spike. That guy in Hong Kong had big losses, and he went to the bank and said, you know what? Unwind the trades. I'm not paying. and he was a big client, lots of revenue. They said, fine. Well, I'm like, bullshit. If I had a smart contract, that money would have been out of his account instantaneously because there's no debate.
Yeah.
So code is better than humans. Not that humans need to go away. I still like them. But we can use code in places where we need trust. And that's why I talk about this as the trust net. The trust net is coming. And what blockchain does, and whether it's the Bitcoin blockchain or the Ethereum blockchain or the Algorand blockchain, I'm not technical enough to know which one is the best. But I don't need to. I can dabble and I can invest in things where I think there are really smart people, way smarter than me, that are building really interesting stuff. And that's how I've made my whole career. And the thing about investing in that way is you don't have to be right all the time. Like George Soros has this great line. It's not whether you're right or wrong. It's how much money you make when you're right, how much money you lose when you're wrong. And the key to investing, is never take big losses. Take lots of small losses. When you make a mistake, just make a mistake. Just leave. Just cover. Never double down. Never chase assets down. Now, but Mark, you say buy things when they go on sale. Yes, that's different, right? If you fundamentally understand the value of an asset and the price is below that value, you should buy it, even if it has just gone down. If you don't understand the value of the asset, if you just bought it because of price, if you were one of these Davey Dave day traders, right? You pulled the tiles out of the Scrabble bag and said, go buy this with the green hammer. If you did that, one, you're an idiot. Two, don't buy that when it goes down. Okay? Don't do that. If you look at Metcalfe's law model of Bitcoin, and the value today of that network is around 33,000, and the price today is below that, you say, maybe I'll buy some. That doesn't mean it won't go down further, but I'm buying an asset that, relative to its history, has only been cheaper 6% of the time. In 13 years, Bitcoin has only been cheaper 6% of the time. If I look at NASDAQ has only been more expensive than today 10% of the time. So even though it's gone down 35%, it's still in the 90th percentile of overvalued. And so the difference is chasing something because you think you're right makes no sense. Chasing something where you have conviction in the value price discrepancy is very different. So one, take your losses quickly and let your winners run. And in fact, double up, right? When something is working and increasing in value and generating profits. Now the difference here is don't buy a company that the price is going up, but their profits are going down. Like there was this whole thing in the last 10 years about, I just want to get big and have a big audience and a big network, but I don't make any money. And the old joke was, we lose money on every transaction, but we make it up on volume. No. Profit is what companies are about. And so I look at businesses like Shopify, for example, right? They don't make money. Now, maybe it's a good long-term investment, maybe it's not, but somehow they got to figure out how to make money like Amazon did. Microsoft, on the other hand, Microsoft makes a lot of money. People use it every single day. They migrated into the cloud, genius move. But even that got super overvalued. So what we need to find are models, and this is where Algorand or Ethereum or Solana or Avalanche, people are trying to find models in digital asset ecosystem that allow us to do something beyond the nonsense that was 2017 and ICOs. And because here's the thing, if you buy a token where you have no equity ownership, you have no debt rights, and you have no claim on cash flow, what do you own? Like Dogecoin. There's just no there. And people say, but it's a meme coin and we should all buy it because everyone else is buying it. Like, fine. You want to play that game, right? You want to be a degenerate gambler because that's what you are. You're not a trader. You're not an investor. You're a gambler. And gambling is fine. I don't have any problem with gambling. But know that the odds are against you, right? You go to Vegas and you play and you win and you leave, you make money. If you keep playing, the house will take all the money. Right? That's just how it works. And it's because the odds are against you every single time you play. And so it's not to say that people that bought Doge and made a bunch of money and cashed out aren't geniuses. whatever, that's fine. But people who bought it up here because it was moving, and now they're like, oh, it's going to go back. It's never going back. Never going back. It's going to zero.
Following Luna.
Yeah.
It's going to zero because there's no inherent use. Now, I will say the one thing that could save it from zero is I met with these guys that bought one of the they bought one of the defunct kind of alternative Twitters. It was the far right, Twitter thing, not Getter, but another one. And they're like, we're going to make Doge be the token to tip, kind of like how Jack did on Twitter with Lightning. Like, okay, that's fine. It could do that. I mean, it is a fork of Bitcoin, so it could do that, and that would save it from going to zero. Now, how much different from zero? Not very, but it could exist in that world. So, you didn't ask me about Doge, but I.
No, but that's a good segue. I am curious, with your Morgan Creek digital funds, how do you determine what cryptos you invest in? And is it a primarily crypto fund, or is it more blockchain-based companies with a little bit of crypto?
Yep. So our funds are 70% equity, so good old-fashioned venture capital. So you guys start, JDC, so JT, David, and CeeLo, JDC Corp, and I give you $5 million for 25%, and I own equity of whatever business you're going to do, some media empire. All right, that's good old-fashioned venture capital. So we do that with infrastructure businesses in the digital asset ecosystem. So we invested in Coinbase, we invested in BlockFi, we invested in Gemini, we invested in Figure Technologies, we invested in a whole bunch of other companies, Stably, which I was just with up in Seattle 2 days ago, that make stable coins, and just equity of businesses. And we invest in them the same way that we used to invest in, the Googles and the, eBays and the Alibabas and all the other businesses we've invested in as equity. 30% of what we do, we invest in liquid protocols, token, but we invest in them as venture capital, not as traders. We don't trade, we buy and we hold. Why? Because we believe that unlike the internet, so the internet, if you go all the way back to the beginning, the 60s and 70s, there were 80 different protocols, all competing to be this, because originally there were 3 sites, DC, Texas, I think, and Palo Alto, it was DARPANet, and they're trying to find these ways to make communications secure. That's the whole thing about protocols. And long story short, Vint Cerf created this thing called TCP/IP, which you and I are using, right? Or 3 or 4 of us are using right now to communicate. And it was pretty cool, but it really didn't do anything from 68 till 91. Man, a long time. It was just duking it out. And this guy, Tim Berners-Lee, came along and invented the internet, not Al Gore. Al Gore actually did help, right? He got some legislation passed to stop the incumbents from throttling the growth. So he is important, but he didn't invent the internet. But Tim Berners-Lee did, right? He wrote 9,500 lines of code, made the first website. And from that, the internet flourished, and HTTP, protocol was established. And now we have TCP/IP at the base layer. We have FTP to manage files. We have SMTP to make email work, like Hotmail. And then we have HTTP for websites, and we have www that ties it all together. Well, here's the thing. Tim Berners-Lee, not a rich guy. Vint Cerf, not a rich guy. How is that possible? Well, he couldn't own TCP/IP. So who got rich? Zuck. How did Zuck get rich? He stole the idea from the Winklevoss twins, built this app, gave it away for free, and then took our data and sold it. Genius, right? Genius. Bad, maybe bad. Stealing bad, but genius. Okay. But Tim, the thing I do like, Tim recently took the 9,500 lines of code, turned it into an NFT, and sold it for 5.3 million. So I love that story. I wish I could have bought it, but I didn't.
I didn't know that.
So he got a little richer. And he's a professor at MIT. Nobody's crying for Tim. He's a really successful, and he's actually got a blockchain startup that is interesting. But he invented this thing, but he couldn't really profit from it. So if you look today, we've got, and this is my theory, right? We got Bitcoin as the base layer. We got Filecoin, which kind of functions as that layer to transfer files. Then we've got Ethereum, which is kind of like the www. It's a toolkit. And then in the middle, I don't know, right? You got a bunch. You got, Solana, you got Avalanche, you got Polkadot, you got Cosmos, Algorand's in there somewhere, all duking it out to see what's going to be in that middle part of the stack. But here's the amazing thing. We've invested in some amazing businesses, right? Tens of billions of dollars of value, but all of them, us, Pantera, Blockchain Capital, Paradigm, A16Z, all of us together have generated like $250 billion worth of value. But there's 2 trillion of value in the whole ecosystem. Where's the rest? It's in the protocols, because you can own the protocols. Yep. And imagine being able to own the thing that transfers all the value in the future.
Yeah. I mean, once you tokenize, you can tokenize everything down the road. I mean,
everything. And look, every stock, every bond, every currency, every commodity, every piece of art, every house, every business, everything, all $700 trillion of assets in the world will be tokenized. We'll all trade over blockchains. We'll all be in public, accessible ledgers, and we'll have perfect title. We won't have to pay for title insurance. We won't have to pay the $7 trillion of lost fees because there's 7 different systems that don't talk to each other. All of that's going to happen. And again, so what we want to do, JT, it's a long answer to your question, is we want to try to pick those winners. So we in 2018, we bought 4. We bought Bitcoin, which we thought was a Series B. And a Series B means you still think you can make 100x your money. A Series A means you think you can make more than that. And then we did a couple pre-seeds, where a pre-seed investment. So we bought Bitcoin, Ethereum, Series B, Series A, and then we did 2 pre-seeds, Solana and the Graph. The thing about a pre-seed investment, 98% will go to zero. 98% go to zero. So most of the utility tokens out there are all going to zero, right? They are pre-seed stage venture capital on a blockchain, and most of them are going to zero. Now, the ones that don't go to zero, you can make like a lot of money, like 500 times your money, 1,000 times your money. But unless you're really technical, it's hard. And so for Solana and the Graph, Multicoin Capital and Kyle and Tushar helped us. And so in Fund 2, we kind of made a mistake. We went a little too far Bitcoin maxi, and I missed a bunch of good stuff. We were early in synthetics and Aave, and we could have participated in DeFi somewhere, but we didn't. And we all make mistakes. In Fund 3, we've been slower to invest. We don't have much in liquid protocols today because we're in crypto winter, and I think crypto winter is going to be here for a while. So I like to buy things when they're cheaper. We have nibbled on the edges in a couple places. We also run validator nodes, so we earn Ethereum as a validator node. So we get it that way. We get hash from our provenance node. And we were trying to be a validator node for DM, but that didn't happen. So all of that is moving us into this place where we'll have a mix of equity investments and protocol investment. And then the last piece of it is, if you look at certain protocols like Avalanche, well, you can do both, right? You can own the equity of the foundation, but you can also own the Vox token. Yeah. And I don't know about Algorand. I know I could own the token. I don't think I can own the foundation, but maybe I should talk to the guys about it.
I think you could technically own equity in the Algorand Inc., the private company behind that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, so I got questions. You brought up a few things, but it makes me think of Michael Saylor and regulation. And watching one of his recent videos, and he was talking about stable coins, right? So we all know UST algorithmic stablecoin was not a great idea. It crashed.
Unstable coin.
Unstable coin. Excuse me.
Unstable coin.
And we know UST has problems with if they're actually backed or not, and they unpegged as well. And so it seems like Circle and USDC is where we're all probably going to go. What do you know about government crypto regulation for stable coins, and how is that like playing?
Yeah, it's coming. It's kind of, look, it was not an accident that Janet Yellen announced the day after UST collapsed, right? And look, I'm a conspiracy theorist at heart, full knowledge, and I am certain, I'm 100% certain, despite all the people saying, "Oh, wasn't us," bull crap, it was you. So whether those guys had knowledge of who in their organization did the attack, I mean, the attack was laid out in a thread on November 21st. This guy, Freddie, whatever his name is, I mean, perfect. And the guy, and whoever did it, followed step by step perfectly. Did the $1 billion short on Bitcoin, did pool 3, got it to liquidate, got the Bitcoin to liquidate, made money on the short, and then made $1 billion on the short, lost 200 million on UST, but crashed the whole thing. And the next day, they're like, oh, we need to regulate stablecoins. Well, why? Every dollar that goes into stablecoin is coming out of fiat. Every dollar that comes out of fiat, they have to replace in the banking system, or their leverage ratios go out of whack. And part of the problem is the only way you can do that to attract capital is to raise interest rates. Well, raising interest rates blows up the whole system because the government can't finance themselves at higher rates. So we're in this weird time where there's this jawbone. Oh, we're going to raise interest rates. Really? How are you going to do that with a $400 billion amount for interest at the government level? If they doubled interest rates, right, from 75 basis points to $1.50, that would go to over $1 trillion. The deficit's already $1 trillion, right? And the cult of Kelton, the whole, we'll just print money out of thin air. That doesn't work, right? If you could print money to create wealth, wouldn't everyone do that? Wouldn't every country in the world be wealthy? It doesn't work. Zimbabwe tried. Venezuela tried. The Bolivar is toilet paper, literally. I have 100 in the office. I have $100 trillion Zimbabwe dollar bill. Wouldn't buy a loaf of bread. 100 trillion. Okay, wouldn't buy a loaf of bread. And so see, well, this is such an important point, because if you think about regulation is a tool that is bought and paid for by incumbents to slow disruption. Right? I'll tell you a true story. So they invented the horseless carriage back at the turn of the century. And by the way, in 1903, the largest car company in America was the American Electric Vehicle Corp. Elon Musk did not invent electric cars. They existed. And Henry Ford had created this thing called the Model T. And his friend, John D. Rockefeller, who ran Standard Oil, and Standard Oil took oil and refined it and made kerosene for lamps, right? Because you had kerosene lamps. And the effluent, like the waste, they'd flush into the river. And the problem is the river would literally catch on fire because it was gasoline that they were pumping out into the river. So crazy. John D. Rockefeller came to Hank and said, Hank, look, don't use grain alcohol for your Model T. Okay, use my gasoline. I'll give it to you for cheap, and you give me a piece of your company. I'll give you a piece of mine, and that's the history. And they bought American Electric Vehicle and shelved electric vehicles. Right? If you go to the basement of the Dartmouth Engineering School, there's a car from 1903 that got 46 miles to a charge in 1903. Okay, so that was where we're going. But the big money. So what did they do? So they said, "Oh, we're going to have these cars, these horseless carriages." Well, the carriage lobby and the buggy whip lobby went to New York, and they got a law passed. Like what the law passed in the middle of the night, yesterday about Bitcoin and mining. They got a law passed that said if you had a car in New York City, you had to have someone walk in front of it with a red flag. That's where red flagging. That's where the term comes from. Right? And they were trying to slow down the adoption. Now, there are more cars than horse and buggies in New York City today, and more cars everywhere in the world, because regulations are bought and paid for by lobbying, right? And here's the crazy thing. So ExxonMobil, right? They're talking about this big windfall profits tax. So Exxon, made $40 billion. So in the old tax regime at 40%, they should have paid $16 billion, right? How much do you think they paid? They actually got a rebate. They got a rebate. Oh. How did they get a rebate? They paid $300 million in lobbying, which is another word for corruption. And they don't have to pay tax. And so what's happening now is the banks are saying, well, wait a second. We don't like this crypto stuff. We don't like money going into stable coins. We want the money to stay in the bank. So you need to stop this. So, okay, I'll pay whatever it takes for you to find a way to regulate this and stop it. And so we're in the then they fight you phase. And this is going to be a bitch. But the good news, we've already won, right? This technology is going to win. There is no question the world will run on blockchain. There is no question that money, right? Gold is the only money in the world, It's an asset that exists in the absence of a liability. There's only one in the history of the world, gold. Now, Bitcoin is digital gold. Everything else is a currency, and currency is backed by debt. And that's the reason that 75% of all the paper currencies in the history of the world have evaporated, literally gone to zero. And the dollar from 1913 to today has gone down 95% because of inflation. It's supposed to be good for you, but it's not. And so currency will eventually migrate, right? There'll be digital currencies, fiat, and they will continue to waste away. But there will be alternatives, not just Bitcoin, but other things. And there will be other networks that allow us to do everything in financial services. From transferring title to investing, to moving things of value, to storing things of value. All of that is going to run on chains. And whether it's a single chain world and we build on top of that, again, I'm out of my technical depth. I actually think it's more likely a multi-chain world because the trilemma is real, right? Scalability, speed, and security. I always say it a little bit differently. In computing, you can be fast or secure. Pick one, right? Visa, super
I'll
fast,
say this.
not secure.
You got to watch Silvio. We'll send you some links. Algorand will say it solved the trilemma in the blockchain.
Look, I am a fan. I'm not as up to date as I should be. I said I told David I would do some work, and I did some work. And I've got, I actually got my guys working on it as we speak. And
there we go.
And I know some people that I admire in my business who are supporters. And so we're definitely going to do the work because at the end of the day, the solutions are going to come out of academia. Right? That's where innovation
MIT.
happens. Yeah, MIT, right? And whether it's Stanford or whether it's MIT or whether it's, University of North Carolina, it doesn't really matter. Innovation comes, vitamin K, right? University of Wisconsin has this massive endowment because they invented this stuff that they put in milk that makes our bones strong. So pretty good thing, and vitamins. And maybe vitamin K does something else, but it doesn't really matter. So all of it is innovation is an asset class. And all these other things that we talk about, stocks, bonds, currencies, commodities, are all made possible because of innovation. And that's why I love doing stuff like this, because you embody a community of people that have done some work and believe in an innovation. And I think that's fantastic. And so that belief creates enthusiasm, which creates energy, which creates focus, which creates more people doing more work. And that's when we find out sometimes things don't work, as we saw with Luna. And here's the difference. Why would anyone want to be known as a lunatic? It's just ironic. And it's also ironic. It's the irony lost on no one that we had Luna, right? The moon went to Terra, the Earth, right? Crashed, right?
Yeah.
Moon crashed the Earth.
It's
a little
very,
ironic.
very
It's
ironic.
a little ironic.
Yeah, I do have a question to piggyback off a little bit more of what you said. I mean, obviously, I got tons of questions, and you were full of knowledge. So definitely thank you. And I know that I see the chat; they're appreciative of a lot of what you're saying. One of the things that I wanted to ask is, Bitcoin in its run, and for the majority of crypto, even though it is very, very volatile, right? We're all feeling the effects of the bear market right now, especially as things are falling and seems like free fall. When are we going to find support? But one thing I would say is, ever since Bitcoin's inception, it's had a relatively, easy market, I guess, to grow in, as far as tech being, a very hot spot for money to flow into, even though, yes, there's been downturns and things that have happened like COVID. But what, I see, and I also see a lot of the charts, from, very prominent figures on Twitter and on social medias that, show the phases and the cycles of Bitcoin, right? But this, I feel like, right now, the recession word and the depression word, and just the really overheatedness of the market is being spoken of more. How do you think Bitcoin and the greater crypto market fares, if we do go into a quote unquote recession, depression, and things don't continue to get better, and this crypto winter goes on longer? What is your
I mean, look, winter is hard. There was a show on TV years ago. I can't remember the name of it. And they basically got 3 families, and they put them out in mud huts out in the middle of the prairie in Kansas, like the early settlers. And they said, all right, you over the summer, you guys prepare for winter. And they showed them doing all the stuff, planting the food and canning the goods and chopping firewood and putting up the skin, the animal skins and the meat and salting. And by the end of the show, they're like, okay, now the evaluation. And they're like, okay, family number 1, you die. Family number 2, you die. Family number 3, you die. Like, what? We had all this stuff. And like, family number 1, you have about 10% of the firewood. And their firewood stack was like massive. If the family number 2, you had like 25%. And theirs is twice as big. And family number 3, I mean, they had wood everywhere. Like, you don't have enough firewood for the winter. And so winter is hard. And if we have an unwinding of, one of the greatest bull markets in history in terms of just too much money printing and too easy money for bad companies. And the problem is when you don't let winter happen, and you let the bad companies exist, they siphon money away from the good companies. And so you get a misallocation of capital, and that's what's happened. And so now we're seeing the beginning of this. And the real problem comes with the reactionary policy. So if you go back to 1929, we started down, we had a little recession, and they freaked, they panicked. The central bank tried to tighten liquidity, okay? And they passed Smoot-Hawley. They tried to pass tariffs against foreign trade. And what happened? We turned a garden variety recession into the Great Depression. So what are we doing this time, right? We're tightening liquidity, and we're talking about tariffs. Mm-hmm. Are we freaking stupid? Do we learn nothing from history? So if we turn a garden variety recession into the Great Depression Part 2, and we have the greatest leverage in the system, right? We have more margin debt and more leverage. And look, part of the problem with crypto and Bitcoin in particular is in the normal part of the cycle, right? Buyers and sellers come and buy and the hodlers hodl, and it's fine. And you get close to fair value. But then what happens is people go to places like BitMEX and Binance and others and they borrow. And if 10 times leverage is good, well, 20 times leverage is better. Right. 100 times leverage must be freaking awesome. Yeah. No, it's not. It's not. An 80 vol asset. Bitcoin is an 80 vol asset. Same vol as Amazon, by the way. This is funny. Here's a funny stat. Amazon, right? Been a public company for 26 years, compounded 40%, 40, for 26 years. Do that sometimes, 1.4 to 26 power, it's a big number. But it has 80 vol. Every year, including this year, it's at a double-digit drawdown. The average is 31%, 5 times more than 50%, twice more than 90%. When was the right time to sell? That would be never. Who bought in 1998 and held to today? 5 people. Jeff, mom, dad, ex-wife, Bill Miller. That's it. Everybody else got shaken out by the volatility. Same thing with Bitcoin. Bitcoin, for 13 years, compounded at 114% with 80 vol. When was the right time to sell? Never. So, but here's the problem. Okay? Value is not price. Price is a liar, right? When the price got to 20,000 in 2017, December 18th, 2017, the value was 10. The value based on this Metcalfe's law model of the number of nodes, the number of participants, transaction size, et cetera, so the money into the network. But the price got to 20. So then what happened is you overcorrect and it went all the way down to 3, right? At 3, it's super below the 11 or 12 of value. Well, now at 29 versus 33, it's a little undervalued, but it's not super undervalued. But as long as there is still leverage in the system, and when I mean the system, I mean the equity market. Right? If people still own NVIDIA on margin and they get a margin call, you can't sell the NVIDIA because it just collapsed. So what do? You sell gold, you sell bonds, and you sell Bitcoin. And so what's happening over the past 6 months from November is as the world started to go down, as Peloton went down 90% and Zoom went down 90%, and all these meme stocks just got cratered. The people who had borrowed money had to pay it back. They couldn't sell the stuff because it had gone down. So they had to sell what was liquid.
Other assets, yep.
Yeah.
And so now the flip side of that is what comes of that. If we turn a garden variety recession into the Great Depression, we will have the greatest monetary response in the history of mankind, bigger than 2020. What happened in 2020 to Bitcoin? It crashed, right? Remember, right after the lockdowns, Bitcoin went down 50% in like 14 hours. Why? Because people were forced to sell for margin calls. Stocks got crashed, liquidations. So then what happened? It went up a lot, like a lot, from 5,000 to 69,000. Why? Because we increased the money supply. We printed 50% of all the dollars in the history of the Republic. That's 256 years, guys. 256 years. Half of it in 2 years. The price of everything had to go up. So everyone's talking about inflation. This is not inflation. This is monetary devaluation. My house, right? The value is up 40% in the last year. Bullshit. My house didn't grow. It didn't get more efficient. It actually wore out. I've actually put money into it to keep it at the same level. What happened is the currency I price it in went down. And this is the thing about Bitcoin that people don't pay attention to. One Bitcoin is one Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Will always be the same. But we don't price it in Bitcoin. We price it in dollars. People in Russia price it in rubles. There's never been a down market in Bitcoin in Russia. There's never been a down market in bolivars in Venezuela. There's never been a down market in pesos in Argentina. So when you price it in another currency, that's when you get the fluctuation. And so what we're seeing is Bitcoin didn't get better. It's the same. The dollar got worse. And so why is Bitcoin price going down? Because it got too high, right? The value was 33 and the speculators took it to 66 because of leverage. Now they're getting delevered. And so the price is falling. And so what happens is there are four types of market participants. They're investors, people who buy things because they sell at a price below value. There are traders who don't give a shit about value. They just buy stuff and they sell stuff and they're just scalping. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Hard to do, really hard to do. Nothing wrong with trading. There are speculators. Speculators are simply the opposite side of hedgers. Oil companies have to sell oil in the forward market to secure production. The speculator has to speculate on the price of oil rising, so they're speculators. Nothing wrong with speculation, except it's not based on value. So what happens is if the price is going up, you speculate up, and then if it goes down, you don't know what to do because you didn't do any work. The problem is the gamblers. Gamblers don't understand odds. And so they come late to a market. They buy just because it's moving. And this is a guy problem. And I don't mean this in a purely incorrect way. But my wife will say, hey, Mark, go get the ketchup. I'll open the fridge. There's no ketchup. And she'll walk up, grab the bottle. I can't see it because it's not moving. Men are hunter-gatherers. If it ain't moving, we don't see it. So when the price is moving, all the guys flow in. There's actually work done this. There's a paper called Boys Will Be Boys by Terry O'Dean. And it proves that women are better investors than men. Because men are overconfident, we overtrade, and we trade in stuff we don't understand. Women do none of those things. And so it's not saying that every woman is a good investor and every guy is a bad investor. That's not my point. It's just that there is this predilection to becoming a degenerate gambler when prices are moving. If you just step back and just be a value person and you try to buy things when they're on sale, right? Investing. Only business in the world. When things go on sale, people run out of the store. If you put wedding dresses on sale, do people run out of the store? No, they will kill each other to get in the store and buy the wedding dress, right? When you put stuff on sale in the markets, people run away. And the cheaper the price, the further they run. And most of it is because they haven't done the work. So the investors come in, right? When you be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. So anyway, you guys know all this. You guys specialize in financial education. So I'm preaching to the choir, but the answer here is blockchain is coming. Blockchain is the future. It is the operating system for the internet of value. And everything of value will be digitized, tokenized, and will trade on blockchains. Yep. All of it. Now, whether it's Ethereum, Algorand, Solana, we don't know yet, but it's going to be some combination of them. Bitcoin definitely is digital gold, right? It's a perfect use case, and it has all the attributes of scarcity as gold does, and it's more portable and more divisible, right? If you've seen the movie Knight's Tale, one of my favorite scenes, he wins the little gold calf, like bangs it on the table and breaks a piece. Says, go do what you do. That is a bad way to divide the gold. Right? If I had a bar of gold, I wanted to give you each 25%. I can't break it, right? I can send you any amount of Bitcoin to 8 decimal points using my mobile phone. And all of it in the world, it's right here. Now, I don't have any here. Don't SIM swap me. I've been SIM swapped twice. But it's more portable. It's more divisible. And so, and Paul Romer won the Nobel Prize 3 years ago for this. He said the best technology doesn't win. It's the technology that gets critical mass first. It's called the law of increasing returns. And you've seen lots of examples of that over the years. And it doesn't mean that there couldn't have been something else besides Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin does have some elegance to its design, particularly the fact that it doesn't go down and there's never been a fraudulent transaction, right?
Nope.
How many times you had to get a new Visa number because they got hacked and you had to get a new Visa number?
Once
Never
a year.
happened in 13 years. Tell me how many people you think per day are trying to attack the Bitcoin blockchain. $600 billion worth of value. People are trying every single day to hack it. They haven't been able to. Why? Because it's perfect, at least so far. And what's interesting about it is people have to understand how money works, right? People say, oh, it's been hacked. No, it hasn't. No. How much money has been stolen from the Federal Reserve? $0. How about Bank of America's New York office? $0. How about Bank of America Texas branch, El Paso, Texas branch? More than $0. How about your wall safe? More than $0. How about your purse or wallet? Way more than $0. The further you are from the source of the money, the more risky it is. So how much has been stolen from Bitcoin blockchain? $0. How about from Coinbase? $0. Really, expensive technology system, $0. How about from two guys in their garage at Mount Cox? More than $0. How about people's phone? Yeah. Don't leave a lot of crypto in your phone. Why would you do that? Would you walk around with 10,000, cash in your pocket? No.
Yeah.
So now what we need, I think this is a random non sequitur. What we need for Web3 is the equivalent of this, right? So Web 1 was all about the browser. So Mark Andreessen created Netscape, and then we had, Internet Explorer, and that made the internet ubiquitous. This came along and made the mobile net ubiquitous. And someone needs to create the wallet functionality that will be the inroad into Web3. Now, I don't think it's another device, right? Ledger would like us to all carry a little nano around, and I just don't think I want to carry another device.
Nah.
So it's got to be a browser extension, or I don't know. And we've invested in a lot of different things to try to get that. And whoever gets that is going to make a lot.
Paraalgo wallet. That's what one of the commenters think.
All right. I'll check it out. I would definitely check it out. Someone shoot me a DM on that. That'd be great.
Yeah, Paris.
Yeah, certainly. I feel like we could ask you questions all day. I don't know how much time you have. We are running a little bit over an hour already.
We're probably over. Look, I always talk too much.
You got to definitely come back one day.
Back. Yeah. I love these things because I believe in what you guys are doing. I believe in the power of media and community. And the thing that's amazing about this is communities are important. And communities then were utilized by Web 2 to make monopolies super rich.
Yep.
And if you invested in those monopolies, you could get rich too. So if you bought Google stock or you bought Apple stock, that's cool. But this is different. Communities can now become economies.
Yep.
And the ownership nature of Web3 and of crypto broadly, and that includes Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not crypto, Mike. It is. It's a cryptographically secure technology. It is crypto, but whatever. And all crypto means is cryptographically secure. Cryptocurrency means something different. It means a medium exchange or a store of values. Only about a dozen of them. Everything else is utility token. Utility token, very different. If I don't have rights, I don't have rights. So lots of different things that we can do on blockchains. Not all of them need to be blockchain, but many of them do. And the things that do exist in blockchain and the things that migrate, like play to earn or play to own. I mean, my mind is blown at how we can create value. Like I invested in Uber, Lyft, etc. And it galls me every time I get in a Lyft that someone who wrote code 10 years ago gets 30%. Right? Yeah. Shouldn't be that way, right? The drivers and us users should own it. Should be a big DAO, and we should all business. Now, there's something about intellectual property of the geo mapping. So, okay, fine. So maybe Lyft or Uber should get a royalty the way the company that puts the chip in every phone, Qualcomm. The way Qualcomm gets a $1 for every phone. So fine, pay them for the technology, but the owners and the drivers, the users and the drivers should get the benefit because they're creating the community and the revenue. And I think the same thing's true of the creator economy. You guys, I'll leave you with this. This show you that I'm not completely as old and uncool, right? So you've probably seen the Crypto Boy song on TikTok. If you haven't, go listen to it. I mean, I will argue that's a hit record. I think it's as catchy as Skater Boy. But the thing about it, I actually composed an open verse challenge, but my daughter said I could not do it. She said, "You are not going to be on TikTok." But I composed one that said, okay, you don't want to hear about my NFTs, fine. But here's the thing. NFTs are about ownership and royalties. And if you, who spent all this time on this song, and it kicks, millions of clicks, right? But ByteDance gets rich, not you. If you own the NFT, your bags would move. That's the key, ownership and royalties. So the creator economy is big, big, big. And Jimmy Song, who you should have on here sometime. Jimmy is hypnotic, the way he talks about how Bitcoin in particular, as hard money, frees us up to be creative, to create other things, whether it's Algorand or other things that are built on top of it, because we don't have to worry about the government stealing our wealth through inflation.
Yeah.
And that's a really compelling thing if we can spend less time being slaves, and that's a loaded word, slaves to fiat, and more time being creators and producers of value.
Yeah.
And this is the last thing I'll leave you with. You know, the WEF wants there to be less people on the planet. We need more. People solve problems.
Yeah.
People create value. We need lots of people. But what we need is education. I mean, what you guys are doing to educate the people and get them financially literate. And so I applaud what you're doing. Thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. I mean,
awesome.
I know I speak for everybody when I say we'll definitely have to get you back on for a second round, as there's still tons of questions, buzzing in my head that I'd love to ask you. But obviously, I don't want to keep people here all afternoon.
Yeah. Hey, great
we'll do it again
information.
I appreciate you guys having me. And I'm sure you can have a whole show where you talk about me when I'm not here.
We might have to, yeah. That was some gems and jewels right there. So thank you.
All right.
Yeah, this
has
been
have
great.
A great weekend, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Take care, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Take care, y'all.
Peace, Mark.
All right. Thanks for everyone that stayed to the end of this video.
Yeah.
If you liked the conversation, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to all of our channels, Crypto for Change, Passive Income Network, JT Invests in You. We'll have more of these coming down the pipeline in the future.
Yeah.
And I appreciate
you can
everyone
also
that stayed.
follow Mark on Twitter. He also does weekly shows on Blockworks, which is another YouTube channel out there that has a show called On the Margin. So
definitely,
if you like hearing from Mark, and he was really informative, I watch the show almost every week just because I like hearing his thoughts. He's obviously very smart, so that's where you can catch him as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, take care, everyone. Till next time.
Have a good one, y'all.